Hey there, Mariah here, content producer at Pod. In this video, I spoke with Pod's head of GTM, Harrison, to talk all about AI deal coaches. We discussed what they do, how they can improve, and what other AI functionality is critical for account executives today, especially as teams get leaner and deals get more complex. We also talk a little bit Harrison's career trajectory, from his door-knocking sales era to being a new AE to eventually planning executive sales strategy here at Pod. Check it out, let us know what you think, and don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel here to stay in the loop about all things sales. Enjoy with what inspired you to pursue a career in sales in the first place.
That's a good question. I feel like I hear this answer a lot and it
Mm-hmm.
applies to me too. So, um, I feel like it kind of just happened by accident. So, a little bit about me, so when I was in college, I actually co-founded a, little tech startup. This is back in 2011-ish time. And it was pretty cool. I had, a couple of people that I had met through a mutual friend. One of them was an entrepreneur. And yeah, we'd started this, app. It was basically a social media platform, committed to positive social change. So partnered with big nonprofit organizations to reach a more dedicated target audience that wanted to get involved with their causes and things like that. And that's where I just kind of fell in love with tech in general. I really liked it. We had a shared office space in the Twitter building, which at the time I thought was the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah.
And so I just really liked the space. We got some seed funding, kind of fizzled out. We ran out of money. And, one of the big reasons I realized, which was, kind of shocking at the time, is we weren't able to monetize. So, we weren't able to build in a actual business model to bring in revenue. So that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of the first aha moment I realized how important it is to have a successful kind of sales motion in place at a company to be able to grow it. Then from there, I got a job. My first real sales job was actually at a company that did driveway hardscaping and backyard designs. So I would
Oh,
go to
cool.
people's homes and kind of help them redesign their backyards with pavers, outdoor kitchens, fire pits, things like that. And then drop the price on them, negotiate with them, and try to sell them on the project. And so that was really my first real experience in the sales world. It was kind of fun. Our version of outbound was literally knocking on doors. So that was a fun time to be alive. And then, I enjoyed it for a while, but I missed the tech space. So then I got
Mm-hmm.
back into it at another company where I was doing mostly B2C sales
Mm-hmm.
at a tech company. And then I got really kind of more into the AI space and in the
Okay.
B2B SaaS space in particular when I joined Orem. So that
Okay.
was one of my roommates in college, best friends, was part of the founding team. He'd been there since
Mm-hmm.
day one.
Mm-hmm.
They had raised some seed capital. They were looking to bring some people on board, and I was just really interested in what they were doing. So that's when I joined, and that was really my first experience at an early stage company that really took off. And so I
Mm.
got to watch it grow. And then that's kind of just where I fell into this ever since. So kind of
That's
by
so cool.
accident and just realized it's important and
Yeah.
enjoyed it. Yeah.
That's so funny. Yeah, I feel like by accident tends to be a lot of people's routes. They kind of just stumble into it, stumble upon it, fall into it by accident, but then it's something kind of sticks with a lot of people.
Yeah,
That's
I
so
don't think there's a
interesting.
lot of people who are, in high school and college who
Yeah.
are I want to go into sales. But then
Yeah.
it kind of just it happens. Maybe they realize they're good at it. Maybe they
Hmm.
realize there's good money to be made from it. So it just
Yeah.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
different ways it can happen.
Yeah. And for you to want to stick with it post door knocking era really shows a
Mhm.
love for the game because that's got to be the trenches of the trenches. Door knocking.
Yeah, it kind of like everything you get callous to it, you get used to it.
Sure.
The first few times is, anxiety driven.
Yeah.
Who's going to open the door? Are they
Yeah.
going to have a gun with them type of thing? But then no, you just get used to it and then you just get callous to rejection and you realize you're just need to find a gold nugget here or there.
Right.
and it makes it all worth it.
Do you think this is sales as of now is still a great career for somebody to actively pursue?
I definitely think so. I think it's a good career path for, I mean, there are a few different reasons. One, I think that really anybody can learn it. I think like
Yeah.
if you're willing to really put in the work and the effort and learn different, methodologies and processes and like
Hmm.
learn how to multi-thread, and if you're like gung ho and willing to put in the manpower and effort to do some outbound, whatever channel that is. And I really think anyone has the potential to learn it and figure it out. You don't need a finance degree. You don't need a sales degree from college to get into it.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of good money to be made. I mean, and especially nowadays, like, AI is making the life of a seller a bit simpler in that sense. So, I mean, if people are willing to adapt and, you know, with AI and, with all the new processes and stay up to date with all the new things coming out and just constantly trying to like work on their game, get better, rehearse, practice, get
Hmm.
coached, etc. It's a good way to make pretty good money. I mean, it's, people right out of college can start making six figures as an SDR if they really are like super gung ho about it. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely think it's a good path for people.
Yeah, that's what I figured. It's even though it is a job with like a low barrier to entry, like the potential to go anywhere with it and to make like an incredible wage is limitless. So that's really cool. Makes sense.
What's nice too that I think is, I feel like a lot of different career paths, a lot of different jobs that you do, you really don't start making great money until like you've worked your way up into mid-management, upper management, executive level leadership.
Right.
With sales, I know a lot of AEs who have been AEs their whole life and have turned down leadership roles because they are just making bank being an
Mm-hmm.
AE.
Yep.
And like I know some AEs that make 400, 500K a year, and they're just like super happy with that. And like,
Yep.
so there's different paths you can take. If you want to go the leadership route, that's great, super
Mm-hmm.
admirable. You can do that. But if you're a top performer, you can get there in a few years and like
Yeah.
you have a good flow that works for you and you're confident. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so I just think that it's more flexible in how you can make a really good income.
Yeah, exactly. That's so fascinating because not everybody like wants to add people management into the mix, and so to have a route available to you where you don't necessarily have to, and you can just keep growing and making more money as like an individual contributor is pretty cool. What does your day to day look like as the head of GTM at Pod?
Really the core three principles of like where I want to focus like the majority of my day is around generating top of funnel for the business across
Mm-hmm.
all of our, motions and avenues there, which is through like partners, pure outbound, omni-channel, content, social, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously selling activities, meeting with prospects, trying to get them to go into POCs, coaching the reps and the managers when they are doing trials,
Yeah.
discoveries and demos at the early stage, negotiations, building business cases. And then also a big focus on our actual customer base. We try to have open Slack channels with them. So I'll meet with the reps whenever they want to meet. I'll meet with the frontline managers, the decision
Mm-hmm.
makers, then on like a quarterly basis. And then for the other aspects, like anything RevOps related
Mm-hmm.
or, things to do with like partners, things like that, I'll typically try to save that more for what would be considered off hours for most people. So kind of like post 5 p.m., I'll go into HubSpot and start building some workflows with triggers and things like that,
Yeah.
which, ChatGPT helps me with kind of how to actually build the ideas that I have, which is helpful.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, and like, a little bit of stuff like that on the weekends as well. So that's kind of what my day to day looks like. But it's definitely important to, with so many hats to wear, really
Mm-hmm.
understand like what is the best use of my time
Right.
this moment for the business.
Right, exactly. You have to maximize your time and be as effective as possible if you're doing all of these roles. That's crazy. What was it originally? Like I know that tooling is so important to you. What was it originally that drew you to Pod's product?
Good question. So, well, I saw I've been in like the rev tech space for the last 6, 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
But my last two companies were really specifically focused on the top of the funnel. So I worked for an intent company, and then before that, I worked for a parallel dialer. So
Mm-hmm.
really focusing on generating, top of funnel leads. And when, I first spoke with Patrick, and he kind of told me the challenge that he was trying to solve, which is that, everyone is focused on top of funnel because it's so important. But what often happens is it gets thrown on the lap of an account executive who doesn't necessarily have the guidance and the know-how to, close the deal. They make mistakes in
Mm-hmm.
day-to-day deal execution. So oftentimes, all this resources, energy, and funding that you put into the top of the funnel kind of goes into a leaky bucket.
Right.
And having a background as a seller myself, um, you know, I've felt that pain before too, where
Mm-hmm.
it's like, you can just make common mistakes here and there, whether it's around multi-threading and optimizing your buying committee effectively, or it's, sending the right messaging in the follow-ups, like continuing to ask the right discovery questions, things like
Mm-hmm.
that, following your sales methodology to a T.
Yeah.
And so I just thought it was a really interesting and very relevant problem that he was trying to solve. And then,
Mm-hmm.
we chatted for a couple of months and I really got into the product. And I just thought it was, especially for the stage where the company was at, like such an incredible product that the team had built.
Yeah.
And so I was just super excited to come on board and just really get it in the hands of sellers and their managers because, like I said, 6, 7 years in RevTech, I'm pretty passionate about helping sales teams succeed,
Right.
whatever aspect and avenue that is. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's just really, really got me excited.
Interesting. That makes sense. I feel like from the outside looking in, when you think about the pain points a seller has, you do think about top of funnel. It's about like you probably have a hard time engaging people and getting the first prospects on the line. And I think, people assume that once they kind of have you, a seller intrinsically knows what to do with that and how to like kind of run that ball to the finish line. But it really do be a leaky bucket.
Well, it does. And it's not, I mean, the sales game is constantly changing.
Yeah.
It's getting more complex every
Mm-hmm.
day, every year. More stakeholders come into play.
Mm-hmm.
Funding isn't what it used to be. And so companies
Mm-hmm.
are tighter with their budgets. So, like, as a seller, when you're, working a deal in the middle of the funnel, you're going to have to navigate more stakeholders. You're going to have
Mm-hmm.
to build stronger business cases. You're going to have to
Yeah.
really uncover the whys behind the whys of, the pains and the goals that they're going for. So,
Right.
it is becoming more and more of a relevant problem. It's not, the pre-COVID days when companies were a little, more happy with, spending money, especially with
Mm-hmm.
more complex selling motions, when you're
Yeah.
selling into, you know, kind of mid-market enterprise space, there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of nuance and complexity that goes into that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're just here to make sure that we're guiding reps on really the best actions to take to
Right.
mitigate that risk and close those deals faster.
Producing content for Pod means I look into a lot of sales content, and the problem I see over and over again is the coaching gap across the industry. So yes, like sales is changing on the inside and on the ground, but there's a lack of resources available to help coach people along the way to kind of
Mhm.
mitigate those risks, like you were saying. So it's a great fit, and yeah, I'm excited to talk more about the product. But first, just to zoom out on AI in general, I'm assuming like when you were door knocking, like AI wasn't on your radar at all. But when do you remember it kind of coming into play?
Yeah, great question. I'd say my first experience with AI was probably when I joined Orem back in 2020. So, we were an AI conversations platform. So what it did
Mm-hmm.
is it allowed you as like an SDR or an AE, when you're going about your cold calling efforts, let's say your connect rate is 5%,
Mm-hmm.
calling somebody manually one dial at a time to
Mm-hmm.
talk to 5 people could take hours,
Right.
whereas with that software, it would allow you to do that in really like minutes. So really you're
Mm-hmm.
just getting at bats faster. You're multiplying the number of ones you're getting. So I think that was really my first experience with, wow, holy cow, this is like technology is really making my life easier as a
Mm-hmm.
seller. So I think that was probably my first experience with that.
Okay, wow. So that was must have been years ago, 3, 4. Couldn't have been that long ago.
Uh, well, I think when I joined, yeah, I was about like 4 years ago, 5 years ago,
Okay.
probably five, a little over 5 years ago. Yeah, I was like
Okay.
beginning of 2020.
Okay, yeah, wow, a minute. But how it has ramped since then.
It's
Um,
changed a lot, and it's changing so fast. I mean, I think that they say that, AI's capabilities and processing is doubling
mhm,
every 7 months or something.
mhm.
So,
Oh, wow.
that's another thing that's scary but exciting is making sure that you're staying on top of all of the like new changes and all of the new
Mhm,
things that are coming out.
mhm.
Because, I think that it's going to be so important to adapt and be able to use AI effectively, not just
Yeah.
in sales, in any
Mhm.
job.
Yeah.
Whether you could be a lawyer, an accountant, a seller, a marketer,
Yeah.
a doctor. You need to learn how to use AI, or someone who knows how to use it better than you,
Mhm.
may come take your place.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think, like, in your example, making, your tasks and making your job faster and more streamlined for you, what started as an efficiency tool, AI, is now also very effective
Hmm.
in people's day to day. So that's kind of where we'll transition into the deal coach. Doesn't necessarily speed things up, but helps you make better decisions. Can you kind of give us a rundown on what a deal coach is, an AI deal coach?
Yeah, absolutely. And you really said it so accurately. I mean, there's so many great things out there for efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, Pod helps you do that, but we're really focused on is effectiveness and execution.
Yeah.
So, what Pod, the deal coach, does is, it takes into consideration, all of your data sources. So, your historical CRM data, your call intelligence tools like Gong or Fathom, or pulling transcripts from Zoom directly if that's the case. The
Mm-hmm.
raw emails data that you get, your calendar, LinkedIn, and we
Yeah.
synthesize it all into one kind of single pane of glass. And what our deal coach allows you to do is look at your deals at kind of a 30,000-foot view and say, hey, what's going well, what's not going well? It gives you a real health check status of the deal itself with the flags.
Mm-hmm.
So, might say, hey, you have a lot of touch points compared to similar deals to this. Great job there. But then
Yeah.
it'll also show you where there's risk. Like, hey, we still don't know who maybe the technical buyer is, or we're not even really sure if we have a champion here or who the decision maker is, or hey, this deal has been stuck at stage 3 in the sales
Mm-hmm.
funnel for 60 days. Typically,
Mm-hmm.
deals similar to this are stuck there for only 45. So,
Right.
that might be risks that typically might go over a seller's head, but now Pod is just bringing it to you, kind of with X-ray vision, being able to
Mm-hmm.
show you, hey, like here's the health status. But then as far
Mm-hmm.
as the actual execution and effectiveness part is, okay, great. Now that I know that, what do I do? So I think that's where there's a gap between a lot of platforms and solutions out there and what we're trying to solve. So then we will actually make recommended next steps and actions you should take.
Right.
So, hey, we still don't know who the technical buyer is. Why don't we leverage, John Smith, who
Mm-hmm.
across all your interactions has shown great engagement. His sentiment is super positive. He's an influencer in the deal. Let's leverage him to help us multi-thread into this account. That's
Mm-hmm.
just one example of like a
Right.
recommendation that Pod can do.
Mm-hmm.
And, you can just click right into it, writes great email copy that takes into account all your past interactions with a call to action to help, get in front of those other stakeholders.
Fascinating. And so I know that a lot of people, leaders and sellers alike, kind of have this hesitation around AI, but that sounds pretty like cut and dry. Obviously, like this isn't a good tool to have. Where do you think that trepidation comes from then?
I think there's always some trepidation around AI. I think that people are worried that there's oh, AI is going to take our jobs type of
Mm-hmm.
thing. That is
Mm-hmm.
not what we are here to do. I don't think that's what most AI native companies are here to do. We're
Right.
just here to kind of be that helping hand, that digitized version of
Mm-hmm.
your favorite manager or your
Mm-hmm.
top performer kind of holding your hand, guiding you on those best steps to take, in your day-to-day deal execution.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I always think that there's people who think, oh my gosh, maybe they have past experiences with platform solutions that are a nightmare to implement. Well,
Mm-hmm.
one way that we talk about that is that we really built Pod with the seller in mind. Anyone can go to Pod's website and sign up for Pod. You literally
Yeah.
log in with your CRM credentials, you connect your Gong or whatever other call intelligence tool you use, you connect your email, boom, in 2 minutes, you're ready to go. So I
Right.
think that it comes down to people thinking that they need resources and time and
Mm-hmm.
effort and manpower to get this set up when really it's super simple.
Right.
And then on the flip side too, I think that there's still a lot of people who are, yeah, scared about AI just kind of taking their jobs in general.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, that's fair. That's a valid fear. I forgot about how much of a hump implementation can kind of be to cross. Yeah, because people don't want to sink extra time and work and energy into something that may or may not work for them. I also hear a lot in the industry about people being afraid that AI is going to like take the humanity out of the sales interactions and out of the space. But what Pod is doing is not, you know, removing opportunities for you to connect as a human. It's just helping you facilitate like kind of all of the other to dos on your plate, right?
it's just helping you make better, faster, smarter decisions.
Right.
We're not taking the human element out of selling. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we're not, doing any sort of like speaking on your behalf. I mean, really think of Pod as like the 95% of the work and effort that goes into closing a deal
Yeah.
when you're not actually on a meeting or on a call with a prospect,
Mm-hmm.
and all of that complexity and nuance, like that's what Pod is kind of helping you push
Mm-hmm.
forward. So it's not taking any of the human aspect of it. If anything, it allows you to focus more on like the actual human selling activity. So if
Yeah.
anything, I think you can make a case that makes it a more human experience.
How do you think like an AI coach could improve for the future, or do you think like it's already at its max effectiveness?
I feel like there's always room for improvement.
Mm-hmm.
Whether in that case for us at Pod right now, it's, coming up with more flags and recommendations, that are relevant to sellers. And so, we really pick the brains of our customers, try to figure
Yeah.
out like, things that are important to them. We have really close relationships with them, and so they help us a lot in our product journey.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's always ways you can do it better. I mean, off the top of my head, can I think of what those are? Not yet, but I'm sure I will. It's always, I say it's like trying to explain the internet to somebody from like the 1920s. They wouldn't be able to comprehend it, nor can I
Mm-hmm.
comprehend like all of the crazy improvements we're probably going to make in the next year, but
Mm-hmm.
they're going to happen. So,
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So deal coaches, are effective at giving that 30,000 foot view for sellers, but what can a deal coach really do to help the managers or the leaders of the sellers?
yeah, that's a great question. So, we find that oftentimes, a rep and a manager have a one-on-one once a week for 25, 30 minutes, and
Right.
it's supposed to be tactical strategy deal coaching. But what it really turns into is more of a data hygiene grilling session. You spend 20 of those minutes kind of just going through being like, oh, we need to update these fields in Salesforce. The closed data is in the past, like what's going on here.
Yeah.
So where Pod comes into play is it gives the manager a much more crystal clear view with the rep. You're
Mm-hmm.
on the exact same page saying, okay, Pod is saying these are our top 5 deals right now. And these deals are at, maybe our 5 deals that are at the most risk. Let's
Mm-hmm.
dive into these deals in particular that we
Yeah.
really want to focus on. And then from there, the first thing you'll see is the deal coach. So instead of relying on rep memory, scattered notes, managers having to listen to gong calls on 2x speed, to kind
Yeah.
of get up to date on what's going on, there's that view of exactly what's going on at the deal. And what's
Right.
nice too is Pod is comparing the deals you're working on today to ones that you've closed or won historically. So is
Mm-hmm.
it if it's a similar deal based on not just the size, but the industry, the location, the specific service or package you're selling them, Pod is going to give you those flags and recommendations based on those similar deals. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really an apples to apples comparison that could oftentimes not just go over a rep's head, but a manager's head, so that you
Right.
really get a good understanding of like what to do next and like, how to mitigate risk and push the deal forward.
Right, exactly. And it's not so much of a grilling session anymore. It's about
Exactly.
like actual high level like coaching, and you can talk about, how you're doing on the calls versus, you know, follow ups and touch points and all the stuff that kind of Pod takes care of. So that's really cool. So, yeah, we talked a lot about the AI deal coach in particular, but what other features does Pod have that you find are most effective in a seller's day to day?
Yeah,
There's
that's
so
a good
many.
question. There's so many. I would say I'd say the top four things that
Mm-hmm.
I think really are kind of aha moments for reps and for
Mm-hmm.
their frontline managers. One is the deal coach that we just went over. Then I think when you want to take it even a bit of a step further is in our framework analysis. This is
Mm-hmm.
another area where managers can get a much better view and give much more tactical coaching for the reps. And for the rep, it helps them, and be able to act, think, and sell like a top performer a bit more. So we have all of the kind of gold standard sales methodologies, MedPick, BANT, Challenger, Spice, Spin, etc. built in. We built custom ones for some of our customers as well.
Yeah.
And to show you, hey, this has been fully covered, this hasn't been covered at all, this has been
Mm-hmm.
partially covered. And then when you click into it, showing you the summary of what we know so far, but then actually showing you next steps, questions you should be asking, things you should be doing, ahead of your next meeting or on your next meeting to further your understanding of a specific topic of a
Mm-hmm.
sales methodology. And then I think the third would be when you want to take it even a step further is when you want to look at the contact sentiment. So
Mm-hmm.
now you want to actually say, okay, at the deal level, I know what's going on.
Yeah.
Now I want to understand like what's going on with each member of my buying committee.
Right.
You have 5, 10 plus stakeholders in a given deal across tons of different departments. So what Pod shows you is their overall sentiment. Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it neutral? Has it
Mm-hmm.
been trending up or down over recent touch points? What are their top concerns, their areas of excitement, the next steps or follow-ups that we agreed to? So
Mm-hmm.
really being able to kind of tailor your approach to like each individual stakeholder, because they all have obviously really different criteria in evaluating a solution. They have different challenges, they have different goals, they have different concerns and things they're excited about. So it's not a one size fits all pitch, as a
Mm-hmm.
seller that you're selling to. You have to know how to navigate that buying committee in a very strategic and customizable way.
Right.
So I find that extremely helpful. And I'd say the fourth is really where all the data comes to life ahead of your meetings. So in our
Mm-hmm.
meeting brief, what that allows you to do, you know, I mean, this has been me too historically, but if I have a big late stage like negotiation call coming up,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a big deal. I'm talking to the economic buyer and my champion and a bunch of other people.
Mm-hmm.
I might go back and I might spend 2 hours prepping for it, listening to all my call recordings on 2x speed, rifling through 4 or 5 different email threads, to remember what's been discussed, and then
Mm-hmm.
looking at my notes, which are scattered as well across my CRM and just like randomly on my computer. So
Mm-hmm.
now what Pod does is it brings all that data to life for you in the meeting brief. And so it'll actually recommend, hey, here's 10 topics of conversation you should discuss on this meeting today. It could be if you
Okay.
still don't have a full understanding on specific topics of your favorite sales methodology, but it
Mm-hmm.
can also be based on very specific talking points, objections, action items, concerns, so on and so forth that have come up over previous calls or in emails, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So to kind of help you really lead the conversation like a pro, know
Mm-hmm.
exactly what to talk about, exactly what they care about, and exactly what you need to do to kind of further your understanding and mitigate risk and push the deal forward. So I'd
Yeah.
say I mean, there's so much other things Pod does, like it's a change agent for CRM data hygiene. You can
Mm-hmm.
take really crisp notes directly in Pod, but I'd say that those four are really like if I was a seller and I only had to use four things a day, then those would be the four.
Yeah, that makes sense. I find contact sentiment and meeting briefs in particular are super fascinating because like historically, just a few years ago, those are the kind of elements that, again, a seller had to kind of intuitively know how to do or to remember how to do. But like, in this landscape, when buying committees are so ballooned and they're juggling so many deals at once, that's becoming increasingly an unrealistic expectation of sellers. So, like, having the data to back up, like, how a prospect is feeling instead of trying to remember the vibe or to try to remember every single talking point is super underrated. So,
100%. I think that, a lot of, especially just kind of how, with the way the world is now, a lot of teams are smaller. So I
yeah,
think AEs are asked to juggle a lot more than they used to deal wise. An
yeah,
enterprise rep used to maybe work 10 accounts, 10
yeah.
deals, let's say a given quarter. Some of our customers are, their enterprise reps are working 20, 25 deals a quarter because there's only
Oh,
like two or three of them.
yeah.
And they admit, like, yeah, it's like, it's a lot to remember. And then every deal
Mm-hmm.
has 10 stakeholders involved. So now you're talking 200, 250 stakeholders you're working a given quarter. And it's like, how in the world do you possibly remember everything that's come up over all your interactions? So being able to
Yeah.
have that in pod to just bring it to you in an instant and give
Mm-hmm.
you that kind of sixth sense
Yeah.
is a game changer.
Just to wrap it up, I would love to know what advice you would give to a young Harrison just starting out today. If you
uh,
could go back in time.
I would just say, always be looking to learn, whether that's from, you know, thought leadership from people in your network or on LinkedIn, but also stay up to date with all of the
Mm,
new things that come out, especially now with AI, new products, new platforms, new ideas, new processes are coming out every single day. And so
yeah.
I think that I would tell younger me, like, hey, like, stay on top of this, like, do your research, be an expert in your space.
Fascinating. That's like super tactical future you advice to give to him. I feel like a lot of the answers are always just like, listen. But
I
you
don't
even
know
have
if he,
that
I don't
unlocked.
know if younger, I don't know if past me would listen to that advice, but I would really try to shake him and be like, come on, this is important.
Yeah. That's so funny. That's the only other thing I wanted to ask was where do you think the industry is going to go in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think you'll see smaller but mightier teams that
Mm-hmm.
are armed with the best solutions, the best processes, very well educated on AI. I really think that teams are going to have to adapt. And
Yeah.
I just hear it more and more like every, most of our customers, most of the prospects we talk to, they're already trying to do it. They're going to bat to their boards and their CEOs saying, hey, I don't have head count to hire. But,
Yeah.
our quotas are getting bigger. I need to get my team more educated on, AI use cases and we need to implement them. So I don't think it's going anywhere. I do think it's just here to help. I don't think it's going
Right.
to necessarily take jobs, but you're going to get more, yeah, you're going to get leaner teams that are just armed to do more with less.
Right. That's fair. It's a good guess.
We'll see. Appreciate it.
Great.
Thanks, Mariah. Always good
Of
chatting
course.
with you.